Some lives are declared worthless long before they stop breathing. The storm hit Colony Meridian at 2:13 a.m. Sheets of blue plasma rain hammered the steel rooftops hard enough to shake the windows inside the medical wing. Dr. Ethan Cole barely looked up from his coffee when the emergency alarms started screaming through the corridor. Another mining accident, he thought. Another burned worker dragged in from the outer rigs. But then the floor trembled beneath his boots. Not an explosion. Impact. Every monitor inside the room flickered white for half a second. Outside the reinforced glass, something enormous tore through the clouds, trailing fire across the night sky. Ethan stood slowly. The nurses froze beside him. Nobody spoke. The object crashed somewhere beyond the eastern landing fields with a sound so deep it felt alive. A few seconds later, every light in the colony shifted to emergency red. Unidentified vessel detected. The station AI repeated. All civilians remain indoors. Ethan grabbed his field jacket before the announcement even finished. 15 minutes later, cold wind whipped across the wreckage site, while security teams circled the smoking crater with rifles raised. The ship looked nothing like human engineering. Its surface curved like liquid silver, glowing faintly beneath layers of ash. Parts of the hull were still moving, almost breathing, as if the vessel itself was trying to survive. No life signs, one officer muttered. Ethan stepped closer anyway. The smell hit him first. Burned metal mixed with something strangely sweet, almost floral. Then he saw the hand. Pale, slender, motionless beneath twisted debris. Wait, Ethan said quietly. The officer beside him grabbed his shoulder immediately. Doctor, don't touch it. Ethan ignored him and knelt in the ash. The body beneath the wreckage was unlike anything he had ever seen. A tall female figure wrapped in fractured silver armor. Skin glowing faintly beneath layers of soot. Long white hair scattered across the metal floor like strands of light. Her eyes were closed. Dark violet markings stretched across her neck and collarbone, pulsing weakly under the rain. Alien. Definitely alien. And dying. One of the soldiers stepped backward nervously. That symbol, he whispered. I've seen it before. Ethan barely listened. He pressed 2 fingers gently against the side of her throat. Nothing. Then suddenly a pulse. Weak. Slow. But there. She's alive. The entire group went silent. Another guard swore under his breath. Doctor, if that thing is Vaelari royalty, this colony is finished. Ethan looked down at the unconscious woman again. Rainwater rolled across her face while faint blue blood shimmered beneath cracked armor near her ribs. She didn't look dangerous now. She looked alone. The officer raised his voice. Step away from her immediately. We contact Central Command and wait. Ethan stared at the wound. Internal bleeding. Falling body temperature. She had maybe minutes left. Maybe less. He exhaled slowly, then reached for the med scanner clipped to his belt. What are you doing? The officer snapped. Ethan finally looked up. His eyes were exhausted. Calm. Human. My job. He slid one arm beneath the alien woman carefully. Her body felt lighter than he expected. Fragile. The moment he lifted her from the wreckage, every soldier around him stepped back like he had touched death itself. Somewhere high above the clouds, thunder rolled across the black sky. Then the unconscious alien opened her eyes for exactly 1 second. Violet. Bright enough to stop his heartbeat. She looked directly at him with fear, confusion, and something colder than hatred. Then her eyes closed again. And far above Colony Meridian, hidden beyond the storm, dozens of silent lights appeared in orbit. The operating room lights buzzed softly above Ethan Cole, while rain slammed against the reinforced windows like handfuls of gravel. The alien woman had not moved in 23 minutes. Not since they brought her inside. Every scanner attached to her body flashed warning symbols Ethan had never seen before. Her heartbeat was unstable. Her blood temperature kept falling. And the machine translating her biology into human medical data was barely functioning at all. Doctor, Central Command is demanding visual confirmation, Nurse Alvarez whispered from across the room. Ethan did not answer immediately. He stood beside the operating table with both hands resting against the cold metal edge while the blue glow from the monitors reflected across his tired face. The alien looked different under clean surgical light. Younger somehow. Less terrifying. Cracks in her silver armor exposed skin almost translucent beneath the glow. Thin lines of violet light moved slowly beneath her collarbone like currents beneath ice. Human anatomy made sense to Ethan. Bones, organs, nerves, predictable systems. But this felt like trying to save a star while knowing nothing about fire. Another warning tone echoed through the room. Oxygen levels dropping. Ethan inhaled quietly. Increase thermal support to 78 degrees, he said. And prep another plasma stabilizer. Alvarez hesitated. We already used enough medication for 3 patients. Ethan glanced at the unconscious woman. Then we pray she counts as one. Outside the room, armed security officers paced the hallway nervously. Nobody wanted to be near the alien. Rumors were spreading across the colony faster than the storm outside. Some workers said the crashed ship belonged to the Vaelari Empire. Others believed the woman inside was military royalty. One terrified mechanic swore he saw warships in orbit. Ethan ignored all of it. Fear never stopped bleeding. It never lowered a fever. It never saved anyone. He adjusted the scanner near the woman's chest again. That was when he noticed it. A fracture beneath her ribs. Tiny strands of silver embedded inside the wound. Metal from the crash. Every breath pushed the fragments deeper. Ethan narrowed his eyes. That is why your lungs are failing, he murmured softly. Alvarez looked up immediately. Can you remove it? Ethan stared at the scan. I do not know. Silence settled over the room except for the rhythmic hum of failing monitors. The alien's hand twitched suddenly against the table. Everyone froze. Ethan stepped closer. Her eyes remained closed, but her breathing changed. Faster now. Uneven. Like her body was fighting something invisible. Then every monitor in the room spiked at once. Bright violet symbols flooded across the screens. What is happening? Alvarez whispered. Ethan did not know. The temperature inside the operating room dropped sharply. Frost crept across the corners of the glass. One of the overhead lights exploded with a sharp pop, showering sparks across the floor. And then the alien opened her eyes. Violet light filled the room instantly. Not bright like electricity. Deep. Ancient. Ethan felt it more than saw it. Every guard outside raised their weapons in panic. The woman looked around slowly, breathing hard, confusion clouding her expression. Her gaze finally landed on Ethan standing beside the table. For one long second, neither of them moved. Then she spoke. Her voice sounded weak beneath the machine noise, but every word carried impossible weight. Why am I alive? Ethan swallowed once. He should have stepped back. He should have called security. Instead, he reached for the surgical instrument beside him and answered honestly. Because I am trying very hard to keep you that way. The alien stared at him silently. Cold air drifted through the room, while violet light flickered softly. Ethan reached for the surgical scanner again. I need 30 more minutes. You might not have 30, the officer replied. Before Ethan could answer, every light inside the room dimmed suddenly. The alien woman inhaled sharply. Thin streams of violet light spread beneath her skin again, brighter than before. Frost crawled slowly across the edge of the operating table. The monitors screamed warning tones. Ethan stepped closer immediately. Easy, he said. You are destabilizing. Her eyes locked onto him instantly. Do not command me, human. Her voice sounded stronger now, colder. Each word carried the weight of someone used to obedience. Ethan noticed the fear underneath it anyway. The scanner near her chest flashed again. Internal damage increasing. He grabbed a stabilization injector from the tray beside him. The moment the alien saw the needle, her entire body tensed violently. Metal instruments around the room rattled against the counters without anyone touching them. One tray lifted an inch off the ground. Nurse Alvarez gasped softly. Doctor. Ethan understood immediately. Instinct. She thought they were trying to hurt her. He slowly lowered the injector. Listen to me, he said carefully. If I do not seal the fracture near your lungs, your condition will continue to collapse. Her eyes narrowed. You speak as if my life matters to you. Ethan frowned slightly. It does. She stared at him for several long seconds after that. Confused. Almost disturbed by the answer. Then her gaze drifted toward his hands. Human hands. Barely protected by thin medical gloves. Hands already stained faintly blue from her blood. Something changed in her expression. Not trust. Not yet. But hesitation. Your species fears us, she whispered. Ethan gave a tired shrug. Most people fear what can destroy them. And you? Rain hammered the windows behind him while distant thunder rolled through the colony walls. Ethan looked down at the cracked wound beneath her ribs. Right now I am more concerned about what is killing you. Silence returned. Softer this time. The floating instruments slowly settled back onto the tray beside the bed. The frost stopped spreading. The alien woman leaned back weakly against the operating table, breathing unevenly. Ethan moved carefully beside her again. I need to remove the metal fragments before they reach your respiratory core. Her eyes shifted toward him once more. If you fail. Ethan met her gaze calmly. Then I fail trying. For the first time since waking, the alien woman looked away first. Ethan activated the surgical light overhead while Nurse Alvarez prepared fresh instruments with shaking hands. Outside the medical wing, warning sirens echoed through the colony again. Louder this time. Closer. One of the guards touched the communicator at his ear, then slowly turned pale. Doctor, he whispered. We just received orbital scans. Ethan kept working. And the guard swallowed hard. There are 47 unidentified warships surrounding the planet. Ethan glanced briefly toward the rain-covered window beyond the operating room. Tiny lights were appearing above the clouds now. Motionless. Watching. Then the alien woman finally spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. They found me. The surgery lasted 3 hours and 19 minutes. Ethan knew because the clock above the operating room door had stopped working halfway through, forcing him to track time manually against the pulse monitor beside the table. The storm outside never faded. Plasma rain continued streaking across the dark windows, while distant thunder rolled through the colony walls like slow artillery. Nobody inside the medical wing had gone home. The nurses stayed quiet. The guards barely spoke. Every few minutes, another transmission arrived from orbit demanding status reports no one wanted to answer. Ethan ignored all of them. His hands moved carefully beneath the surgical lights, while thin silver fragments emerged one by one from beneath the alien woman's ribs. The metal looked almost organic. Smooth. Warm to the touch. Every time he removed a piece, the monitors stabilized slightly. Then another complication appeared. Human medicine was never meant for this. At one point, her heartbeat vanished entirely for nearly 4 seconds. Alvarez stopped breathing beside him. Ethan simply adjusted the energy stabilizer and kept working. You should be dead already, he muttered quietly. The alien woman opened her eyes weakly through the haze of pain medication. I have survived worse things than death. Ethan almost smiled at that. Almost. Hours later, the final fragment finally slid free from the wound. The monitors softened into steady rhythms for the first time all night. Relief spread silently through the room. Even the guards lowered their shoulders a little. Ethan stepped back from the operating table slowly, exhaustion settling deep into his bones now that adrenaline was fading. His gloves were stained blue. Tiny glowing drops shimmered across the floor beneath the surgical lights. Alvarez stared at the readings in disbelief. Her vitals are stabilizing. Ethan rubbed his eyes tiredly. For now, the alien woman watched him from the table without speaking. She looked weaker than before, but calmer somehow. Less like a weapon waiting to wake up. More like someone stranded very far from home. Ethan removed his gloves carefully and tossed them into the disposal unit beside the wall. You need rest, he said. Your body is still recovering. Her glowing eyes followed him closely. You speak to me as if we are equals. Ethan grabbed a fresh towel and wiped blue blood from his hands. You are a patient. I am Vaelari. The way she said it sounded less like a name and more like a warning passed down for centuries. Ethan nodded once. And right now you are recovering in my hospital. For a moment, the corner of her expression shifted very slightly. Not amusement exactly. More surprised that someone would answer her that way. One of the guards suddenly entered the room, carrying a tablet with pale hands. Doctor, he whispered urgently. You need to see this. Ethan walked over reluctantly. The screen displayed orbital scans above Colony Meridian. Massive ships hovered beyond the clouds in complete silence. Long black silhouettes stretching across space like floating cities. 47 vessels surrounding a tiny mining colony. Ethan felt the room grow colder. No communication yet? He asked. The guard shook his head. Nothing. They are just waiting. Behind him, the alien woman slowly sat upright despite Alvarez protesting immediately. Her movements were graceful even through exhaustion. Royal somehow. Ancient discipline hidden beneath pain. She looked toward the screen only once before closing her eyes briefly. They will not attack, she said softly. The guard looked confused. How can you know that? She opened her eyes again. Violet light reflected faintly against the surgical glass. Because they are waiting for permission. Silence swallowed the room. Ethan studied her face carefully now. The confidence. The control. The way fear vanished the moment she looked toward the fleet above them. Pieces were finally beginning to connect inside his mind. The symbols on her armor. The panic from the soldiers. The warships waiting in orbit instead of firing. Alvarez looked pale beside him. Who are you? The alien woman turned slowly toward Ethan first, not the guards. Her expression remained calm now. Distant. Almost sad. Then she spoke the words that changed everything inside the room. My name is Lyra Vaelith. Even the air seemed to stop moving. One of the guards nearly dropped the tablet. Ethan frowned slightly. The name meant nothing to him. But everyone else looked terrified. Alvarez whispered first. Barely audible. The heir to the Vaelari throne. And suddenly Ethan understood why an entire galaxy had come looking for one dying woman. By sunrise, nobody on Colony Meridian was pretending life was normal anymore. Cargo traffic had stopped. Mining rigs sat silent across the eastern desert. Every public screen inside the colony displayed the same image over and over again. 47 Vaelari warships hanging motionless above the atmosphere like dark moons. People whispered when Ethan walked through the hallway. Some looked afraid of him. Others looked angry. One exhausted technician muttered, "One human doctor touches the wrong patient, and suddenly the galaxy arrives at our doorstep." Ethan kept walking. He had not slept in nearly 30 hours. The medical wing smelled like overheated circuits and recycled air. Every few minutes, another emergency transmission echoed through the building from colonial administration demanding answers. Nobody could give. Ethan ignored those too. Inside Recovery Room 3, the atmosphere felt strangely calm compared to the panic outside. Lyra Vaelith sat near the window wrapped in a thermal blanket, while pale morning light filtered through the rain-streaked glass behind her. Her damaged armor rested across a nearby table in shattered silver pieces. Without it, she looked less like royalty and more like someone carrying exhaustion too heavy for one body. Ethan entered quietly holding a small metal tray with nutrient packs and heated water. Lyra watched him approach carefully. Your species does not rest, she observed. Ethan placed the tray beside her bed. Doctors usually do. I am just bad at it. She looked down at the steaming cup in front of her. What is this? Tea. It smells strange. That usually means it is working. For the first time, something close to curiosity appeared in her expression. She lifted the cup carefully, studying the steam rising from the surface before taking a cautious sip. Ethan noticed the slight tension leave her shoulders almost immediately. Warmer, he asked. Lyra gave a slow nod. Better. Silence settled softly between them while distant thunder rolled beyond the colony walls. Ethan updated her medical chart on the tablet beside the bed. Stable breathing. Neural activity recovering. Internal regeneration increasing slowly. Impossible recovery speed by human standards. You are healing faster than expected, he said. Lyra stared out the window toward the storm above the city. Vaelari bodies adapt to survive. Ethan leaned back against the counter tiredly. Must be useful. Her glowing eyes shifted toward him again. Human bodies do not survive well. Ethan laughed quietly under his breath. You are not wrong. She studied him carefully after that. The orbital scans glowing faintly across the hallway monitors outside. 47 warships waiting above a forgotten mining colony because one alien princess survived. Most people would have walked away by now. Maybe they should have. Ethan finally shrugged lightly. Because someone should. Lyra stared at him in silence after that. Not because the answer impressed her. Because she could not understand it. In the Vaelari Empire, kindness always carried purpose. Loyalty. Debt. Power. Nothing was given freely. Yet this exhausted human doctor kept risking everything for someone he did not even know. A soft alert suddenly echoed through the room. Ethan checked the hallway monitor immediately. Incoming transmission request. Priority Alpha. The screen flickered once before displaying an unfamiliar symbol made of silver light. Lyra stood slowly the second she saw it. Her calm expression disappeared instantly. That is impossible, she whispered. Ethan frowned. What? She looked toward him with real fear for the first time since waking up. That signal does not come from the royal fleet. The transmission symbol pulsed again across the screen. Cold. Sharp. Wrong somehow. Then every light inside the medical wing dimmed at once. The emergency lights shifted to deep crimson as the entire colony lost primary power. Air vents slowed. Monitors flickered. Somewhere beyond the medical wing, frightened voices echoed through darkened corridors. Ethan grabbed the edge of the counter to steady himself, while backup generators rumbled awake beneath the floor. Lyra stood motionless beside the window, staring at the strange transmission symbol pulsing across the monitor screen. The violet glow beneath her skin had returned, brighter now. Uneasy. "Tell me what is happening," Ethan said quietly. Lyra did not answer immediately. Outside, the storm clouds above Colony Meridian churned with faint silver light from the orbiting fleet. Massive ships remained perfectly still in the sky like predators waiting for the right moment to descend. Then the transmission symbol changed. A second emblem appeared across the screen. Sharper lines. Darker color. Ethan noticed Lyra's expression tighten. Instantly. "That is not your royal fleet?" he asked again. "No," she whispered. "It is House Karen." Ethan frowned. The name meant nothing to him, but the fear in her voice did. Lyra stepped closer to the screen slowly. They were loyal once. Long ago. And now. Her eyes reflected the cold symbol glowing across the monitor. Now they want the throne. Before Ethan could respond, the transmission activated automatically. Static crackled through the speakers. Then a voice filled the room. Calm. Controlled. Inhumanly smooth. "Princess Lyra Vaelith. Your survival changes nothing. Every guard toward the storm outside the glass. Now both sides are searching for me." Smooth black helmets marked with glowing violet lines. Vaelari soldiers. But different from the royal guard Ethan had seen in archived military footage. Colder somehow. The lead figure removed his helmet slowly. Sharp features. Pale skin. Eyes glowing faint gold instead of violet. He looked directly at Lyra first and bowed his head with practiced precision. "Your Highness." Lyra did not return the gesture. "Commander Serac." The man lifted his eyes calmly. "The Empire believed you dead." Clearly the Empire was mistaken. Serac allowed himself a thin smile at that. "The Empire has made many mistakes recently." Ethan stepped subtly closer to the medical table beside Lyra. Serac noticed immediately. His gaze drifted toward the exhausted human doctor standing beside the heir to the Vaelari throne. "So this is the human," he said softly. Ethan folded his arms. "I have a name." Humans usually introduce themselves after kneeling. Ethan looked tired more than intimidated. Then today must be full of surprises. One of the soldiers behind Serac shifted slightly at the response, but the commander simply studied Ethan with quiet fascination. "You touched royal blood," Serac said. "You carried her, treated her wounds, ignored protocol between species." Ethan shrugged once. "She was dying. That was not your concern." Ethan looked toward Lyra briefly before answering. "It became my concern." Silence settled heavily across the room again. Serac turned back toward Lyra slowly. "Your father's condition worsens by the hour. The council fractures. House Karen grows stronger. The fleet in orbit demands your return immediately." Lyra's glowing eyes narrowed. "And what does House Karen demand?" Serac's expression darkened almost invisibly. "Your public surrender." Ethan noticed the shift immediately. Politics. Power. Fear hiding beneath polished words. Serac continued calmly. "If you return willingly, civil conflict may still be avoided." Lyra stepped forward despite her weakened condition. "You speak peace while their assassins search for me across human territory." The room temperature seemed to drop another degree. Serac remained perfectly still. Not all forces within the Empire remain under royal authority anymore. Ethan finally understood. The warships above the colony were not there to rescue Lyra. They were there because nobody trusted anyone else. The Empire was already breaking apart. A faint tremor suddenly rolled through the building again. Smaller this time. Serac touched the communicator near his collar briefly, listening to something only he could hear. Then his expression hardened instantly. "We are out of time." Lyra noticed it too. "What happened?" Serac looked directly at her. House Karen vessels just breached the outer defense perimeter. Every guard inside the room tensed immediately. Ethan heard warning sirens begin screaming somewhere beyond the colony walls. The commander stepped toward Lyra quickly now. "Your Highness, you must come with us immediately." Lyra glanced toward Ethan for one brief second, long enough for Serac to notice. The commander's eyes shifted slowly between them. Curious now. Calculating. Then another vibration thundered through the colony, stronger than before. Dust drifted from the ceiling lights overhead. Somewhere outside, civilians started screaming. Serac looked toward the hallway sharply. They found the medical wing. And for the first time since arriving on Colony Meridian, Ethan realized the danger was no longer orbiting above them. It was already inside the building. The medical wing descended into chaos within seconds. Emergency shutters slammed down across nearby corridors, while warning sirens echoed through the colony like mechanical screams. Ethan could hear civilians running somewhere beyond the sealed doors. Fast footsteps. Frightened voices. The sound of people realizing their quiet mining colony had just become the center of an interstellar crisis. Commander Serac moved immediately. His soldiers formed a protective line near the entrance with practiced precision, silver armor glowing beneath the flashing crimson lights. Ethan noticed how calm they looked compared to the terrified human guards nearby, like they had prepared for this moment long before arriving. Lyra stepped beside the window, watching distant lights move through the storm outside. More ships descending. Through the atmosphere now. Smaller than the fleet above. Faster. Hunting. House Karen does not negotiate, she said quietly. Then what do they do? Ethan asked. Lyra did not answer right away. She looked exhausted again suddenly. Not physically. Emotionally. They erase problems. A deep vibration rolled through the floor beneath them. Closer this time. Dust drifted from the ceiling panels overhead. One of Serac's soldiers touched the side of his helmet immediately. Commander. Unauthorized entry confirmed inside Sector 4. Ethan frowned. They breached the colony already? Serac nodded once. Your defenses were never designed for a conflict between Vaelari houses. Ethan almost laughed at the understatement. Colony Meridian barely had enough security to stop cargo thieves. Now alien factions were invading hallways 30 feet from his operating room. Another alarm flashed across the medical monitors. Structural lockdown failure. Multiple access doors forced open. Serac's expression hardened instantly. They are moving directly toward this wing. Lyra closed her eyes briefly. Ethan noticed her hand trembling near the window frame. Small. Almost invisible. But there. Fear. Real fear. He stepped beside her quietly. You should sit down. Her eyes opened slowly. You still think like a doctor while the galaxy collapses around you. Ethan shrugged tiredly. Occupational hazard. For a brief second, the tension in her face softened. Then the corridor lights outside flickered violently. A loud metallic impact echoed somewhere nearby. Human guard shouted. Serac raised one hand sharply, and his soldiers activated glowing energy shields across the doorway. The room filled with pale silver light. Ethan looked around quickly. There was nowhere safe inside the medical wing. Nowhere left to hide her. Lyra suddenly turned toward Serac. How long until your shuttle can extract us? 7 minutes. The commander replied. Too long, she whispered. Ethan noticed the way Serac avoided looking directly at her after that. Something else was wrong. What are you not saying? Ethan asked. Serac finally answered without emotion. The shuttle only has room for royal personnel. Silence hit the room harder than the alarms. Ethan stared at him for one long second. You are leaving the colony behind. Serac's golden eyes shifted toward him calmly. My duty is to the heir of the Empire. And everyone else. Serac said nothing. He did not need to. Ethan looked toward the frightened nurses gathered near the back hallway. Toward the exhausted guards trying to protect a colony already abandoned by both sides. Then toward Lyra standing silently beside the storm-covered window. No, Ethan said quietly. Serac frowned slightly. Explain. Ethan folded his arms. You are not taking her anywhere while civilians are trapped in this building. One of the Vaelari soldiers stepped forward immediately, but Lyra lifted one hand slightly, and the room froze again. She stared at Ethan with open disbelief. You would risk your life for strangers? Ethan looked genuinely confused by the question. They are my patients. Outside the building, another shuttle screamed through the storm clouds overhead. Closer now. Hunting the same target. Serac's communicator suddenly flashed red across his armor. Commander, a voice warned urgently. Enemy units have reached the lower medical corridors. Ethan felt the floor tremble beneath his boots again. Then the emergency lights failed completely. Darkness swallowed the room for half a second before silver shield light illuminated everyone in pale shadows. And in that cold silence, Lyra slowly looked at Ethan like she was seeing humanity clearly for the first time. The darkness lasted only 2 seconds before backup generators surged back online, flooding the medical wing with cold white light. But everything felt different now. The colony no longer sounded alive. No conversations echoed through the halls. No machinery hummed in distant sectors. Only alarms. Only footsteps. Only fear. Ethan stood beside the recovery room doorway while smoke drifted faintly through the ventilation system overhead. Somewhere deeper inside the building, metal doors slammed shut one after another. Commander Serac listened silently to urgent transmissions flowing through his communicator while his soldiers secured the hallway. Then suddenly, every monitor inside the room flickered at once. The emergency broadcasts disappeared. A new image replaced them across every screen in the colony. A single throne suspended beneath black stars. And seated upon it was an old alien man wrapped in silver ceremonial robes. The Emperor. Lyra stopped breathing for half a second. Father. The Emperor looked weaker than the statues and recordings Ethan had seen in history archives. Older. Tired. But his eyes still carried impossible gravity. The room fell completely silent as the transmission stabilized. Then the Emperor spoke. Princess Lyra Vaelith. Even Serac lowered his head immediately. The Emperor's gaze shifted slowly through the room before stopping on Ethan. The human doctor still wearing blood-stained medical clothes beside his daughter. So, the Emperor said softly, the stories are true. Ethan looked around awkwardly. Depends which stories. To Ethan's surprise, the old ruler smiled faintly. Small. Genuine. That a human chose compassion while empires chose fear. Lyra stepped closer to the screen. Father, House Karen has breached the colony. I know. The Emperor's expression darkened slightly. Their fleet no longer answers to the throne. Another tremor shook the medical wing beneath them. Closer than before. Serac looked toward the corridor sharply. Your Majesty, extraction must begin immediately. But the Emperor ignored him. His eyes remained on Ethan. What is your name, human? Ethan straightened unconsciously beneath the weight of that ancient gaze. Dr. Ethan Cole, sir. You saved my daughter when abandoning her would have protected your world. Ethan glanced briefly toward Lyra before answering. She needed help. Silence followed again. The Emperor looked at him for several long seconds as if trying to understand something the galaxy itself had missed. Then slowly, painfully, the old ruler rose from the throne. Every Vaelari soldier inside the room immediately lowered to one knee. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. Father. Ethan frowned in confusion. What is happening? Nobody answered him. Across every screen in Colony Meridian, the Emperor of the Vaelari Empire stepped down from his throne and lowered himself carefully onto one knee before a human doctor. The room stopped breathing. Serac stared downward in absolute shock. Even the alarms suddenly felt distant beneath the crushing silence. The Emperor bowed his head. On behalf of the Vaelari throne, he said quietly, humanity is in your debt. Ethan felt completely frozen. You do not need to do that. Yes, the Emperor replied softly. I do. Lyra stared at Ethan with an expression he had never seen before. Not royalty. Not superiority. Respect. Real and undeniable. Outside the colony windows, movement suddenly rippled across the storm clouds above. The 47 warships surrounding Meridian shifted formation all at once. Massive engines ignited across the sky like artificial suns. House Karen vessels began retreating immediately. Ethan looked toward the glowing fleet beyond the rain-covered glass. What just happened? Serac finally rose slowly from one knee, still visibly shaken. The Empire witnessed its Emperor kneel before a human. His golden eyes shifted toward Ethan with quiet disbelief. No faction will continue this conflict now. The medical wing grew still for the first time since the crash. No alarms. No footsteps. Only rain against the windows and the low mechanical hum of life support machines. Lyra stepped closer to Ethan quietly until only inches separated them. Her glowing violet eyes reflected softly beneath the pale hospital lights. Then, without speaking, she placed one hand gently against the center of his chest. A Vaelari royal gesture older than most civilizations. Ethan looked down at her hand in silence. Warm now. Steady. Human, almost. Outside, the storm slowly began to clear above Colony Meridian, and for the first time in many years, The stars over the colony no longer looked cold.